How did a lonely boy with autism, beaten by classmates since childhood, forced by his father to scrub toilets step by step, crush Silicon Valley under his feet, and eventually become a tech tyrant who holds all of humanity's data and near-Earth orbit in his grip? Any one of those extreme labels would be enough to shatter most people, but not him. Today, we're not buying the PR fluff about a real-life Tony Stark saving the world. Let's tear off the carefully crafted perfect mask. Let's take a knife and cut open this massive business empire to see what truly chilling principles are written inside Elon Musk's brain. To understand his cold-blooded nature, we have to go back more than 40 years to where this machine first glitched. 1971. Musk was born in Pretoria, South Africa. If human society were a local network, he came off the assembly line as an isolated terminal that couldn't connect. In kindergarten, when other kids came up to talk, his eyes would drift straight past their shoulders and fix on the blank white wall. The principal pulled his mother aside, looking serious, and suggested testing the boy's intelligence. Frightened, his parents actually sent him to surgery to remove his adenoids, thinking he was just hard of hearing. But a scalpel can't repair broken neurotransmitters. Decades later, he admitted on live TV that he has Asperger's syndrome. The media loves to dress up this condition as a ticket to genius. But in the reality of a South African schoolyard, being socially different only invited the most primal violence. Older boys kicked him down a flight of stairs, their shoes slamming into his ribs and face. He was beaten unconscious and ended up in the hospital to have his shattered nose rebuilt. But bruises heal. What truly shattered and rebuilt his defense mechanisms was the home he had to return to every day after school. His father, Errol, was a businessman who made his money smuggling illegal minerals. Inside that man's body was a random trigger. One second he'd be laughing at the dinner table, the next a torrent of verbal abuse would pour out for 3 hours straight. When he wore himself out, he'd shove a dirty toothbrush into the boy's hand and force him to kneel on the cold bathroom floor, scrubbing every bit of grime out of the toilet bowl. In that so-called home, there was no logic, no warning, only suffocating, absolute submission. If you were a 10-year-old kid living in a system that could crash without notice, what would you do? Young Elon came to a conclusion that was perfectly logical, but also ice cold. People are too dangerous and too inefficient. Trusting anyone means handing them a weapon. Since the real world is a bug-ridden, broken game, he'd just have to get admin privileges and rewrite a new world for himself. The safest place away from all those crazy people was code and books. At 11, he could lock himself in his room for 9 hours straight. He picked up Isaac Asimov's sci-fi masterpiece, Foundation. Most people saw a grand space opera. What he locked onto was the protagonist, Hari Seldon, a system architect who coldly calculated the fates of trillions of people across the galaxy using a ruthless mathematical model. In the oppressive nights of South Africa, a pathological desire for control took root. At 13, he chewed through a programming tape in 3 days, built a shooting game, and sold it for $500. That same year, he hand-wrote a 30-page application form calculating rent, utilities, and cash flow, hoping to open a nationwide arcade chain. No one would sign because he was a minor. But those yellowed pages were his first silent drill in seizing control of the physical world. At 17, he grabbed a torn duffel bag and fled to North America, sick to his stomach from his family. Before he left, his lunatic father cursed him, "You'll never amount to anything. In a few months, you'll come crawling back like a dog." Carrying that curse, Musk plunged into 1990s Silicon Valley, but he was immediately slapped twice. The business world was even harder to control than his father's temper. In 1995, he started a website called Zip2. That pathological need for control erupted completely. He couldn't stand anyone else's redundant code. During the day, he'd curse programmers with the harshest words. At night, after everyone had gone home, he'd sit alone in front of the servers, delete their code, and rewrite everything from scratch. His tyrannical behavior enraged everyone. A legal document was pushed in front of him. and the board stripped him of power. 4 years later, it happened again. He started an online bank, merged it, and was ousted in a coup by his own executives. Twice he was kicked out of systems he had built with his own hand. Twice he watched his admin privileges get taken away. When PayPal was later acquired, his bank account swelled by $165 million. He spent $1 million on a McLaren F1 sports car and drove it recklessly down the sandy roads of Silicon Valley, unprotected, until he crashed it. But the leather of the steering wheel couldn't suppress the fear of losing control that gnawed at his nerves. In the modern corporate game, as long as you're using someone else's system, you can get unplugged at any moment. From that day on, Musk stopped pretending. He wasn't going to adapt to human rules. He would build his own. SpaceX, Tesla. Tear apart those grand visions, and you'll see that every decision he makes is essentially about keeping the underlying valves in his own hands. Millions of electric vehicles collect HD maps. Thousands of Starlink satellites monitor global communications. And now he's bought Twitter, squeezing billions of people's emotions into raw data and feeding it to his XAI. No unions, no dissenting votes, just cold KPI. Inside this closed system, even life and death and reproduction get turned into cold math problems. In 2002, his 10-week-old son, Nevada, suddenly stopped breathing at the hospital. Justine later testified in court that Musk refused to talk about it. He swallowed that gut-wrenching pain, along with the beatings from his childhood, and turned it into fuel for calculating rocket trajectories. It's brutally cruel, but that's Musk. Later, he had more than a dozen children, most born through IVF. Honestly, I can't stomach treating reproduction like picking spare parts. But in Musk's brain, relying on easily unhinged human emotions to procreate is just too risky. He's offended almost everyone around him, and he doesn't give a damn. Strip off the billionaire suit, and he's still that lonely kid hiding in the South African night, staring at a computer screen. He's just throwing hundreds of billions of dollars to build himself a playground where no one can bully him and no one can betray him. Right now, you might be hunched over on a commuter train, or mechanically scrolling through your phone late at night in a rental apartment. On your screen, his starship is blasting toward the sky. The glow hits your face. You tap a like and give this genius a thumbs up. In that second, your attention and mine are turned into electronic signals and silently siphoned into his vast server farm. We willingly hand over our privacy, our data, and our right to look up at the stars, all to a tech tyrant who was once trampled by human cruelty as a child. I used to think he was like Gatsby reaching for the green light across the water. But now, watching his Starlink satellites streak across the sky, I suddenly realize that science fiction novel Foundation was never an escape guide for ordinary people. It was a dictator's instruction manual. Lately, I've often wondered, while we ordinary folks lose sleep over next month's rent and whether AI will steal our jobs, is the man behind that metal hatch watching the back-end data and turning our anxiety into fuel for his control of the universe? In this pre-programmed sandbox game, if you ask me whether we still have the right to pull the plug, I don't know. Maybe even the thought that we are being manipulated is already part of his algorithm.